Superman 2025. These superhero films I find quite difficult to encapsulate. There's so much going on, and I don't tend to have the spoons to follow all the DC comic world, is it DC and the Marvel Universe superheroes. There's so much, and there's so many stories, and there's so many iterations of these stories, and so I I let it wash over me to a large extent. I just not it's not really my thing, but I absorb it when I go and see a film, and I thought I had reasons to go to the cinema today. We're in the middle of a heat wave in the UK. The temperature's above 30 Celsius in the daytime. Our homes are not built for that, and so escaping. Uh, and if I go to a supermarket, I can sit and chill out for a while. But in a supermarket, you have to move on. In a cinema, you can stay in your seat for 2 hours, and it's glorious if the air conditioning is working. So, have to get there, have to get home, but when I'm there, it's lovely, and entertainment's put on. So, what's not to like? Well, um, I so I had a conversation the other day about this new Superman coming up. Someone in who I know through autism, ADHD, there's various groups that I've joined, was talking about this director, James Gunn, and was optimistic about it. So I've looked up what James Gunn did before. It's great. He's a Gen X, and that's my generation. Um, and he's done lots of interesting films, especially the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, which I loved. And he also did The Belka Experiment 2016 and Superman Homecoming 2017. So there's a few films that I remember a little bit about, but again, lots of detail that has been forgotten simply because I just I'm not hugely interested in the superhero genre. But I know enough about Superman, I suppose, because the story. I mean, there's been so many different makes. I mean, was it back in 1978 or something like that? I saw the Christopher Lee story late last year. I actually recorded a review, which I haven't yet finished, but I hope to put up at some point. Um, but given that 1970s film, which I haven't seen, but then some of the films I have seen, Man of Steel, things like that, I am aware of quite a bit about the story, and it's probably really embarrassing, but I confuse some of the stories with some of the other superhero stories. But the more I see films like this, the more they start to make some sort of sense. So I've got familiar with Lois Lane and that Clark Clark Kent and Lois Lane work in the Daily Planet, and you get to see that all in this film. And now in this story, there's a lot more emphasis on social media and the prominence of AI. I found that really interesting. because that's like an update on everything from the earlier versions I've seen, and this allows a turning of the tide of public opinion. It's quite strongly portrayed. I mean, the way the politics of superheroes, as shown in this, I found more interesting than all um, the sort of CGI or AI generated, I don't know what, of creatures, the huge, um, explosions and falling buildings and all that. I've seen that in so many films. I find it tends to just wear me out. I feel jaded and slightly bored by it because I've seen it so many times, seen so many films, action films and other superhero films, and I think, all right, another building's fallen over. Doesn't shock me, doesn't surprise me. Um, so the things that really interest me about it are some of the character developments. So the main character, Clark Kent, Superman, is played by David Corenswet, and Krypton, the planet he came from, was destroyed, but his original parents, sent him on his way, and he sort of plummets or crash lands into Antarctica, and a dog finds him and doesn't really treat him that well. But I mean, there's that sort of element of humour as well. I mean, this dog is quite a lovable distraction and quite interesting. I found there's so as mentioned about Rachel Brosnahan, who plays Lois. She interviews Superman, and she gets quite contentious. He doesn't particularly like it. He seems to fall out a bit with her. She falls out with him. They have quite, I suppose, a fight, as in they disagree. They have a row, um, and it appears that he's been involved. He stops this war between two countries in the eastern flanks of Europe. And that felt a bit. Was this a bit like parallel with Ukraine or maybe the Middle East? The countries are Moravia and Jahanpur, Western Asia, perhaps Middle East. But there's this big conflict. Superman seems to get involved, but controversially, he's not. Um, he's not thanked for it. I mean, there's a lot of controversy, and that's why public opinion's against him. I mean, there's spin doctors. There's the whole thing about how the world actually is in real life, but in this parallel um, superhero comic universe, it's a bit different. And I'm reminded at this point that on social media, on Threads the other day, someone was like criticizing the fact that everyone's going to see this new superhero film whilst the USA is falling deeper into turmoil, and it's really awful. And that almost makes me feel guilty for going to see it. But I'm thinking we need some escapism from the real world, and if it is like a parallel, then there are some things that are good in that they might actually strike um, chords with people who might otherwise fall for what's going on. If it can change minds, then it's good. And I don't know if it can, but I'm just thinking there might be alternatives to the way of thinking, oh no, there's another, Superman film, and that's bad because we should be tuned into the awful news all the time. I mean, sure, we need to pay attention. And the news is absolutely terrible. I can't stand the news because it is really depressing. All the things that are happening, and so any parallels when you see awful things, and then you see awful things on screen in fictitious universes, and then you hear about ICE and what they're doing in the USA, taking people, snatching people off the street, and often it feels, and I think it is, extrajudicial, well, imprisonment for a start. Often, I mean, um, these cases where people have been taken to El Salvador, but also this new uh, place in Florida. What's it called? Um, Alligator, Auschwitz, or Alcatraz, something like that. It is awful. Um, and every so often, when I'm watching a film like this, I am suddenly reminded of real life, and then I get back to the escapism of this film. And whether that's good or bad, I don't know. I just think, well, I am attuned to the news. It's awful. I don't know what I can do to change things, but Um, and the real problem is that it can certainly, it isn't just all the lovely people I know in the US who are at risk, but it could also threaten life in the UK as well in many different ways. So, um, getting back to this film though, the main baddie is called Lex Luthor, and he's played by Nicholas Hoult, whom I first remember from About a Boy 2001, which also stars Hugh Grant. Um, and he's a billionaire. And so, again, there's another parallel. There's like, he's cloned a sort of Superman character called Ultraman. There's um, there's an influencer called Eve. And there's another character called Jimmy who's a sort of, so there's all these sort of slight tenuous connections. I find it tenuous because I'm trying to follow this film, picking up on certain things, and then finding myself caught up in trains of thought, and then thinking, have I missed something else? I don't know. I don't feel I can watch this film all over again. So whether I've picked up enough of this story. There's this Green Lantern who's got this pen bollan, as you'd call it in Welsh, haircut, bowl, pudding bowl haircut, I guess you'd call it in English, which is mentioned on the screen. There's Kendra, played by Isabella Merced. And I saw an interview with her and with Anthony Carrigan, who plays no, uh, Mr. Mr. Terrific. Uh, yeah, Eddie Garthegi. Eddie Garthegi. Yeah, so just sort of made a note of some of the people that I've seen in interviews in the run up to this film, and it's still, because there are so many characters. And some characters were more prominent to me. I picked up more on them and then thought, these aren't actually the characters in the film. So there's someone else. There was Maria Gabriela de Faria, who is Angela's speaker. I just heard her name mentioned once in this film, Angela. She could turn her arms into like rotary blades, like sawmills. very deadly, but she's also got nanotechnology, which she can use to um, destroy lungs. So there's all these things, and I'm thinking, wow, that's powerful, and that's quite uh, heavy going. There's Clark's adoptive parents. I think they're played by, is it Bradley Cooper and Angela Sarafian? So there's um, the Angela's character sort of seems to be involved in picking up the original message by Clark stroke Superman's original parents, first parents, when they send a message that seems a bit nefarious, and that's instrumental in why he falls out of public favour. So there's all this thing, and there's all these experts. There's elements of like fake news that's often brought up. You know, the what's true and what isn't true, that gets covered a bit in the film. There's just so much. I find it interesting, but also find it overwhelming because it all happens in 2 hours, and I just pick up what I can. And then I find myself almost like getting too tired by the CGI and stuff like that. And I pick up also on when characters, with the the baddie characters, call Superman an it and dehumanize him. I mean, all of us in marginalized groups know what that's like, but of course, that would happen as well in this film. I mean, it happens in real life. Again, another parallel. So there's a lot of spectacle. I find it too much. There's a lot of interesting elements in the storyline. I might find it more interesting if this, from the interviews I saw, if they get spun out into another universe, as much as I find interesting to pick up um, in sequels, maybe I will get more into that. But it all depends on whether it is um, all these CGI monsters or whether it's actual human interest stories and character development, which are the things that interest me most. So I'm going to score this 7.25. So it's a bit lower than a few scores, but it's not a bad score, I don't think. It's over 7. It's worthwhile watching. I'm glad I watched it. Um, but I would like to know what you think about it. I'm sure I missed a lot. As I say, lots of it goes over my head. I find it. I just can't. I've never got into the comics, the whole interest of these films. I just remember what I remember from previous films and try and put it all together with what I see in this film and the new characters. And that's it. That's fine. So I'd like to know what you think. If you like this review, please hit like. Um, Thanks if you subscribe and hit that notification button. Um, and well, um, yeah, I'm fairly glad I saw it, but I'm glad. I was quite glad when it finished. It lasted 2 hours 9 minutes, and that was enough. I thought, glad it wasn't 2.5 hours. I mean, 150 minutes would have been too much. But I really enjoyed the respite from the heat, and there was a lot of glitter in the cinema. I sort of like when I went into the screen, there was all this sort of tinsel draped over the door, um, which I guess was to make it feel, in some ways, we were being. It was majestic because it was the premiere day for this film, 11th of July. So that was fun too. But Yeah, let me know your thoughts, and thanks for watching, and bye for now.